stuff. Yeah, I feel like, well, okay, let me ask you, in the Meantime program, is planning one of the things that you talk about, or do you feel like planning is one of the things that holds people back in terms of being able to make money in their business?
I don't actually talk about it that much. It probably more and more because it's become more a thing for me. It'll come up. But no, I don't talk about it as much until the fifth week because
Okay.
this is more the kind of quick tactics, things you can do just tomorrow.
Yeah,
But that's the short-term answer. The,
right.
the, the real answer, the long-term answer is planning. That's like in marketing. The short-term answer, do a 24-hour sale. The long-term answer, do a good job and you'll get word of mouth. Like,
Right, yes.
so it's this program really does not focus in mostly on the other programs, stuff around niching, point of view, business model hubs. That's the real long-term answer. Um, but and what was the second part of the question? Was about the do people struggle
People
because
not planning I mean, you kind of answered it. It's like, does it get in the way of making money?
I don't know if it gets in the way, but it doesn't prepare the way.
Right.
There is no way. There's no trail. So you're constantly out there with a machete, just hacking through the bushes. That's what the reactivity leaves you with.
Right.
Is preparing a trail that you can actually just walk along easily, ride your horse,
Yeah.
pull a cart behind you, and it'll go. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's this counterintuitive thing where it feels like when you're in that time crunch where you're between clients and it feels like a huge, it just feels like you need to hurry, you need to go faster. Usually I've found it's counterintuitive that that's the time to actually slow down. That's the time to like pause and just look at everything and take a day and maybe don't work at plugging away at other things and just look at the whole puzzle, look at the whole piece. And that feels, I think it feels counterintuitive to slow down at those times.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, hey, because sometimes you're in a genuine crisis and you just okay, well, we have to get this done by this date. But I think it's worth at some point you do have to stop and ask the question, how did I get here? Like, how did I get into a situation? And of course, this is often the origin story of most businesses is, well, if I build it, they will come. And so they jump in with no financing,
Mm,
no savings. I'm just going to start this business and it's going to work. Now, it probably will work in a few years, but you put yourself in a very hard situation where you don't have any bandwidth. You got no buffer space. So I have to make money right now. I don't, if I don't get another client, I can't pay rent or they
hmm.
turn my internet off, but I need the internet for my business. So then people start maxing out the credit cards, but then that maxes out at a certain point. So it's kind of one of these go back to the beginnings. And so anyone who's just thinking about starting a business, put some money in the bank. It's worth easing into it, and you work on it while you're doing your full-time job. Maybe you get a part-time job. That's a gentler way to go. But if you do leap in both feet and you build it and they don't come, it's just very hard. But because at a certain point you must stop and reevaluate, because either way, otherwise you'll burn out. You'll be doing work you don't like. You'll be working with clients you don't like. It's not a sustainable thing. And I mean, this is true. It's interesting. So Shannon, who's there, made the comment about the Jams. So the Jams is a project I started in '99, bringing together leading young activists and change makers from around the world. And this is one of the core principles is slowing down. Um, when you get into a conversation, let's say around race or gender or class, um, the tendency of that conversation will be to speed up because of the reactivity. Everyone's very touchy about it and defensive about it. And so if you try to skip over that, like you try to press fast forward over those moments, that's, it's landmines have been laid that will now explode later, and maybe very soon. So there's a need to just, okay, well, let's pause, let's breathe. How are you feeling? Let's all take some breaths. Let's all, reflect. You slow the conversation down so that it actually has that chance of getting anywhere. And the similar thing with building a business. if you don't, I mean, it's the old story of Stephen Covey, you know, in the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about the contest. People are cutting down these trees, and they have these saws, and the first person takes a break every hour, goes for 10 minutes, goes away, and comes back. And the other guy's like, well, this is great. So he pulls ahead because those 10 minutes, he's still going. Of course, by the end, the guy who's taking the 10-minute break won. He says, what did you do? So, oh, every 10 minutes, every hour, I took 10 minutes to sharpen my saw. And that's how you win. In the short term, if your goal really is just short-term income, and there are times for that, you keep sawing. But if you're planning to be around, you know, so I've been in business now over 20 years with this. You can't get to 20 years, um, you know, without stopping at some point and reconsidering and reevaluating, and then coming up with a plan, because a business is fundamentally built. You know, it's almost like building a house when you're building a business, because you're building an architecture that can hold you. Um, you're building a boat that can take you from one island to the other. You're building a structure, which means systems. So I think of plans in the same way as I think of architecture. It's, of course, it keeps others dry. You know, if your boat is your business, other people can get on the boat. Now you can take a lot of people over instead of just canoeing them on a log or a raft. But it also keeps you dry. And but when people are reactive, they're still swimming. They don't even have a log at this point. They're just swimming back and forth and back and forth. And short term, it's like, hey, who can get to that island faster? Somebody who's swimming. By the time I build the boat, you could have swam back and forth dozens of times if we're talking now. But if we're talking in 20 years, who can get more people over? The person swimming and pulling people on a dinghy behind one at a time, or somebody who builds a boat. And that's a big question, I think, for most entrepreneurs is just, is this a hobby or is this a business? Is this something for a couple of years, or do you see yourself doing this in 10 or 20 years? Because if it's just a couple of years, yeah, just be reactive. I mean, there's no problem. There's no moral high ground on it, you know?